The Boat Biz Podcast with the MRAA. We have some incredible content lined up for you with this podcast that we're going to be delivering industry updates, insights that boat dealers need to be aware of, opportunities that dealers can take advantage of, and our favorite part here at the MRAA, actionable ideas that you can implement. First and foremost priority for us in everything that we do here at the MRAA is to deliver on our mission. And that mission is really to recognize that if our industry is going to be successful, our dealers have to be successful. So we drive the success of our dealers. It's something we're very passionate about here. And the way that we look at things around here, it's always a great time to be in the boat biz. All right. Welcome everybody to the 7th episode of the Boat Biz Podcast. My name is Matt Gruen. I appreciate you joining us here today. I am the president of the Marine Retailers Association of the Americas. I am super thrilled to kick off our 2023 schedule of the Boat Biz Podcast, and I was really excited to introduce you to my guest today. I am joined today by Mr. Jeff Strong. Jeff is the president of Strong's Marine, and a long time friend of mine. I'll get into this a little bit. I think, Jeff, you and I will get into it and talk a little bit about some of our background and our history here, but welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Real pleasure. Always great to talk boat business and fun times.
Absolutely. Well, I always like to kick these podcasts off with just a little bit of history, a little bit of background, allow you the opportunity to tell your story. I know Strong's Marine has celebrated 75 years. Huge milestone, great accomplishment. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of Strong's and maybe a little bit about your pathway to getting into your role?
Sure, happy to. So my grandfather started our business. It was called Strong and Holland at that time. He came out of the Army and wanted to go in the boat business and did. That was 1945. And my dad, Dave Strong, started as a technician there. And that was on Western Long Island. And in 1965, he and my mom had a desire to move out to the east end of Long Island in Mattatuck. I have a sister who's 4 years younger than me. So they were looking to raise us out in a more rural area. And thankfully they did. It was a great move. So that was 1965. And they bought a beautiful marina out there in Mattatuck on the bay. And as a kid, my sister and I were brought up in and around the business and certainly had the good fortune of spending a lot of time on the water. Our big boat at that time was a 12-foot MFG with a 6-horsepower Evinrude. So we were sporting it big.
Very nice.
So those memories always have me empathetic and desiring to get, people out on the water in any way that they can, whether it be paddle boards or kayaks or a small little boat with a small engine, any which way they can to get out and start to experience the water. So great memories. We had, fortunately, a great upbringing and, moved up through the business there, went to college at night, had the good fortune of meeting my wife, Ree, and got married when I was 21. Hard to believe, but that was 44 years ago. Not sure how that works. I'm only 45, but I've been married 44 years. But
Great.
And she's a real influential part of the business, kind of behind the scenes. She heads up Goodwill for us, so she does a lot of soft but extremely important touches, kind of behind the scenes, and just a really valuable person, both personally, of course, as well as professionally. And in 1992, my wife and I purchased the business. Was a single location at that time, and started with just a very small group of employees and gradually have built that up with her. And we have 2 boys, Jay, who had been in our business for a bit. And then when he got married, his wife was big into the horse world. So he left us all amicably and went to help her build out. They now have 2 horse farms and they're doing great. He's actively on our board of directors, so he's still very plugged in with our business and very helpful, just not on the day-to-day. And then our other son, Ryan, who is 40, is vice president in our company, doing a terrific job, involved in all aspects. And of course, like a lot of multi-generational businesses, he's 4th generation in our business. he brings a whole nother level of technology and all of the newer things that I do my best to stay up with, but certainly am nowhere near as proficient as he and other people in our company are. But that's what makes a good company, right? Is to hopefully recognize your strengths, recognize other people's strengths, and bring those together. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, we now have 8 locations on Long Island. 6 of them are marinas that we own, and 2 are places that we lease and run. And we have, amazing to me, we have 125 full-time employees. And during the height of the season, we have approximately 75 part-time employees. So I never anticipated that. God has blessed us for sure. And just we're very fortunate to have many, many long-term team members, and that's what it's all about, having
Yeah.
happy clients through happy and delighted employees.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Strong in Holland back in 1945, he had one location. Is that right? Is that how that worked?
One location that was in Lindenhurst. Yep,
Yeah.
southwest shore of Long Island.
And then when your
Um,
parents moved, did they close that location and relocated it to Mattituck? Is that how that worked?
no, my grandfather stayed
Okay.
there running it, and then my mom and dad bought their own marina out east in Mattituck, and started to do their own thing.
Yeah. Nice. Wow. And so you said a small crew at the time, just a few little employees, and today 200 when you count those the
Well, yeah, 125 full time, 75 part time. Yeah,
wow.
yeah, yeah.
What a
But
trajectory. That's amazing. And so that's been since 92, so 30 years now of doing that. Talk a little bit about how that growth came to be and what the opportunities you were looking at and how all that worked.
so, as I mentioned earlier, my sister and I had the good fortune of having 2 great parents who were both involved in our lives personally and professionally. And my mom was a real taskmaster, disciplinarian, if you will.
Sure.
And my dad was more the guy that everybody loved and a gifted technician. So, kind of had it on both sides. And then when I started my own first section of the business when I was 17 and work study in high school, I had the good fortune of my first employee at that time was Hertha Drake, who was 97 now, and is still stay in touch with her. Unfortunately, she actually just passed away 3 days ago, but celebrate her going to the next level. She had a great life, and she and her husband had their own business, and she was my first employee. And so she was another great mentor along with my mom and dad. So, it was always about taking care of people, taking care of your community, and then ultimately good things will hopefully happen. So I'd like to say I was smart enough to be able to have a planned out trajectory, but I don't know that we did as well as maybe it might seem like it's worked out that way. And but we do believe, first and foremost that we try and take really, really great care of our teammates. And if we fall short or when we fall short, which hopefully isn't too often, but we do, we're human. We try real hard to create a culture where they know they can bring that to our attention and we can collaborate and learn from it and get better.
Right.
And with that environment, we've created some really, really great, meaningful long-term relationships with employees and empower them to do the same thing with our clients. And that has kind of helped us organically grow. And it, just has gone one here and one there. We have been strategic about it, though. We knew we wanted to be on the South Fork. We knew we wanted to be on Western Long Island, on the North Shore and the South Shore. So we've been pretty strategic that way and have just waited for the opportunities to present themselves, and thankfully tried to be in a position to act on those when those opportunities presented themselves.
Right. That's great. I know you have told me the story of Hertha in the past. I'm really sorry to hear about her passing. I know how much she
Yeah.
meant to you and your team there. So sorry to hear that.
Well, thank you for that, but more of a celebration, if we can
Yeah,
all get to 97 and be healthy and vibrant and still, she was very influential. that's a great thing to aspire for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So way back then, it set the foundation for you, and talking about how you focus on building teammates and treating your teammates really well and caring for them and building your team that way, building the organization through that kind of philosophy and that approach. Um, I know your slogan, if I'm not mistaken, is home of super service. Is that right?
Correct.
Um,
Correct. Yep. Yep.
how does that taking care of the employees translate for you guys into that super service that you deliver for your customers?
Yep. So the hope and what we strive for is providing super service first and foremost for our employees. So when people hear our slogan of super service, naturally you think about how I fix your engine or your boat or those kinds of things, and those, of course, are extremely important. But to us in our culture, it's the way that we do everything. Do we pay people timely and fairly and be at the leading edge, hopefully, of opportunities? Do we get out on the forefront of training and education and opportunities and hopefully nudge people to grow, where some people are very robust in their desires to grow. Some people have more moderate plans for growth, and we try and be in tune, with those things. So super service to us starts with the employees, and again transcends to our communities as well. But it's kind of how we show up, that way. And we're human. We're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we try and create a culture that allows for really good communication where we can help elevate each other. And then how that home super service transcends to our clients ultimately would be an extension of the same. Do we answer the phones timely and politely and with a smile, and hopefully make somebody's day, so when they hang up the phone, they were like, wow, that was a great experience? Or did I get my work order timely, and was it clean, and was it clear? And did the service advisor answer my questions well when I had a question with the service advisor? Or hopefully the service advisor reached out proactively to me as a client. I didn't have to chase the service advisor down. It's kind of all those kinds
Yeah.
of things. And then, of course, the same thing on all the experiences. We're big with events, and of course, boat sales is also a big portion of our business, new, used, trades, and consignment. And just people, we always like to talk about when you go to a store, whether it's online or in person, and if you have a significant other in your life, when you leave that experience, you typically would turn over your shoulder and say, man, that was amazing. That was terrific. Or you say, holy cow, that was a real struggle. I think we're going to find another path to go next time. So we all have those conversations, as family members and team members and community members. And we want to be on the right side of that,
Right.
for
Absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. And for our audience, to remind us how the boat brands that you carry.
Again, we're very fortunate to have some of the best brands in the world. We have Cobalt and Pursuit. We have Regal and Grady White. We have Cobia boats that we've just recently added. And then on the yacht side, we have Cruisers Yachts and Fairline Yachts. So, and we're big advocates, for both Volvo and Mercruiser and Yamaha and Mercury Outboards. Very big on training with all of our boat manufacturers, yacht manufacturers, and engine brands. But we've worked really hard and really diligently to earn those, and we have to keep earning those, every day, because they're some of the top brands, if not the top brands in North America. And we're blessed to be able to offer those for both our clients and, again, for our teammates, because they're all such high quality products, and those manufacturers provide great levels of service to us. So it makes it overall enjoyable.
Yeah, that's a great lineup. Great. So dive in a little bit about you specifically. So you mentioned this fairly casually when you were telling us this background, but started at 17 with a division of the business. Tell us a little bit about what that was and how that started, and then obviously you don't start off as president of the organization. What different steps did you take along the way to get to where you're at?
Well, first off, I'll share a story before that. My dad in his own way, I was not an ideal high school student by any stretch of the imagination. I thankfully had good grades and all of that, but I had my fair share of other shenanigans as well. And so growing up in the business as a young kid, that way, painting bottoms and scraping barnacles and stuff. One of the things my mom and dad always taught me was, okay, regardless of what you're doing on a Friday night or a Saturday night, if work starts at 8 o'clock, you need to be there by 5 of. Yeah. And so regardless, whether it was, these days are long gone, but if it was coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was there by 5 minutes to 8. And if my dad knew it looked like it was a particularly hard Saturday night, he was for sure that we were going to build docks that morning, or something, to drive the point home. So learned a lot of discipline, a lot of steps, a lot of what to do, what not to do, during those younger days. And then as I took different business classes and such through high school and night programs, and again, had the good fortune, even at 15, 16, 17, to get sent around the country to different manufacturers, programs, and things like that. And I liked it. I like to learn. I like the challenge. I like that I didn't know, and could hopefully come to learn more. And so at 17, we decided to rent. As I mentioned earlier, my dad was always more on the service and technician side of things. My grandfather more on the sales side of things. And I liked both. I liked the technician side of things. So I went to technical schools and learned that. I would never consider myself a super technician, but I had enough technical training to know what a good technician was and what a good technician wasn't. And thankfully, we have many great technicians now. And so with that knowledge, the sales side of things was of interest to me. So with my parents' support, we rented a small 20 by 40 place up on the main road in Mattatuck and started that. And as I said, I was in work study. So I think that store was open from 1 to 7, during the week. So I got out of high school at like 1:15, I think, and hightailed it over to there and opened at 1. And I mentioned earlier, Hertha was my first employee after running it for a season. Had her to add to the mix, learned a lot of what to do, what not to do, and all of those good things, and continued on, with education, both within the industry and night classes. And again, also had the great fortune of being sent around the country to specialized classes like listening classes and articulation classes and Dale Carnegie and things like that challenged you in different ways. And I enjoyed those challenges and had the good fortune of being exposed to them.
That's great. Excellent. Talk a little bit about, as the organization has grown, huge success, all of that, it's growing rapidly, and all of a sudden COVID comes, right? And we end up in a COVID environment. What's going through your mind in March of 2020, and how are you taking what it was at the time? It was 8 locations, right? Have you added locations since that time?
I think we had 6 at that time. Okay. Yes.
So 6 locations, moving right along, growing out of the Great Recession from, a decade ago. What's going through your mind in March of 2020 as that all hits?
So one of the things that's been an additional blessing is belonging to the Parker 20 group. So 20 groups are just a phenomenal tool for any dealer in the industry. If you're not in the 20 group now, there are several different great ones. We happen to belong to a Parker 20 group, and David does a great job. And so the 20 groups are just a great sounding board for, they tend to help keep you grounded when you think you're doing maybe better than you are. And if you're struggling, they're great sounding boards to bring to your attention maybe where somebody is doing better than we might be doing and how they're going about it. So, and great ways to share both successes and fears. And that was clearly a fear,
Yeah.
coming there within a 20 group and at our dealership. And my son, Ryan, and Sarah, our director of operations, and Jim, our CFO, were all excellent at processes and procedures. So I probably should have talked about that a little bit earlier, but, being grounded deeply in process and procedures and trainings for each of our people at each of our locations is critical. And that's something we're continuing to try and get better at every day. Holding me accountable, holding others accountable, holding teammates and our vendors accountable to apply and adhere to those. The reason I bring that up in the context of COVID, when we're first sitting there, my wife and I were sitting at our kitchen table. We fortunately have, at that point, even though it was March, as things were shutting down, I had the team put a small boat in our backyard at our dock, because who the heck knows what we were going to be able to do or not going to be able to do. But I knew just being able to sit and have a boat to look at behind our house and then go out in when it was, reasonably okay, given it was still March going into April, still chilly in the Northeast.
Right.
But was able to think about boating, think about ways to clear our head and hopefully make some really good decisions. And it was concerning, because you look at, okay, we had at that point a normal amount of floor plan for us, but was at that time 6 locations. It's a pretty significant number. And people are saying, okay, things are going to shut down, and they did, for a period of time. And it was a great example of our industry, both our local AMI Marine Association, with which we've always been very involved with, and our New York Marine Trades Association and the MRAA Association, all three locally, regionally, and MRAA being North America, helped tremendously with the different levels of government to be able to declare marine business as essential. That took a little bit of doing. Well, it took a lot of bit of doing, but took a little bit of time. But that was huge to be able to get us back open in reasonable, safe ways. And we applaud both the local organizations and certainly MRAA in leading the way. And so that was huge. So it was, what was very interesting about COVID, after you get through the initial kind of shock of it, is how different people in the community, how different employees responded to it. So sometimes, you have people that you get to know really well, and you say, okay, well, that's kind of a cautious person. I understand that. And so we're going to treat that very cautiously with that. And then another group of people might tend to be more on the leading edge, maybe a little bit less cautious, and they're going to push those boundaries. And in COVID, sometimes people just totally reverse roles. It was, you just didn't know who was going to respond, myself included, who was going to respond to what way. So it was a really good test to adhere to our processes and procedures, and in this case, add some new processes and procedures, and be really, really diligent. I mean, we had daily communications. We were doing webcasts with our employees daily, just to try and keep the communication at very high levels and be empathetic. We did not lay any people off. We did pay everybody. We didn't know there was no PPP money or anything like that at that stage of the game. Thankfully, it all did work out. But we made the decision that, as we always have, we were going to keep our full staff. We were going to make our way through it. And whatever timeline the world allowed us to start to get back to business, we would be prepared for that. And thankfully, those were decisions that our team made, or we made as a team, and the team executed really, really well. But it was challenging. And then thankfully, things started to emerge a little bit. And we were blessed that, we emerged fairly quickly, and we were able to buy some inventory around. Actually, one of our friends is in Canada, fellow Cobalt dealer, and we're able to get some boats there around other parts of North America to actually add to our inventory then. And as most dealers, if not all dealers, have experienced, the past 2 years during COVID were all-time highs for registrations for the industry, and that didn't come without its own blessings and challenges,
Right.
for sure. But yeah, they were exciting times. Don't know if it'll ever be replicated, but was
Right.
initially not glad to be a part of it, but then very
Right.
thankful to be a part of
Right.
it.
Absolutely.
Now we're coming on the post-COVID side of things, but
Right.
before we get into that, didn't know if you had any other questions about
No,
the.
no, I think that's a great overview of all of that, but that's exactly where I was going next. Now it's kind of a segue into this post-pandemic marketplace, post-COVID, all that. We know that the market's going to be different. Where it's already showing signs of being different from what it was in 20 and 21 and 22. How are you making the transition into this post-pandemic environment?
Yeah, so for us with our team, and we've been communicating it for quite a while now, probably 6 months, pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID. And for us in the Northeast, close to the stock market, close to Wall Street, we sometimes tend to feel things a little bit earlier than some other segments of the country. And so I would say for the last 6 months, give or take, we've been talking about the post-COVID. And so that starts with budgeting and having what we as a team consider realistic expectations. And it's hard to go backwards. It's just never been in our DNA. So you reach these plateaus, or what at least at the moment feel like plateaus of registrations and sales of new boats. Used boats, thankfully, continue to be very, very strong. New boats are strong also, but we're now comparing more with similar to our manufacturers and guidance from our manufacturers and guidance from things like Wells Fargo and North Point, where we're comparing our benchmarks more with 2019, 2018, which are still very, very good years for us, for sure. And as has always been our strategy, all of our facility, well, 6 of our 8 facilities are marinas, and 2 of them are highway showrooms. So we're very, very big on balanced revenue, whether it be dockage, winter storage, service, boat rentals, brokerage, consignment, all other pieces of the puzzle. So our new boat sales continue to be strong, and we've got still some pretty robust budgets for 2023 that we've challenged our team to work harder, work smarter, we had 2 years of essentially being order takers to some extent. Doesn't mean everybody wasn't working extremely hard. They were in different ways.
Right.
But now we need to get back. Over the last 6 months, we have transitioned, and I think doing a really good job of that transitioning to, doing really good, hard, diligent follow-up and all the things that it took to build our business in the first place. Now we need to make sure that as a team, we're doing that every hour of every day.
Right. Yeah. After the years that we've had and the growth and the significant sales and so forth, got to be a little bit difficult to look back and start comparing to 18 and 19 and that sort of thing. But what challenges do you feel like are out there for you to make sure that even with those robust budgets and working harder and working smarter, what challenges do you have in making sure that you're able to attain those 2018, 2019 level numbers?
Yep. Well, I think for us, first, it's getting our staff on board to understand and agree what we think is going on in the world and what our manufacturers and our banks think is going on in the world. And so we try real hard to communicate diligently with that, with our senior leaders, and empower our senior leaders to talk daily and weekly with all of our teammates at all of our locations. So the communication piece is huge. Ramping up training, and we've never stopped on training even during COVID, although training was different, of course, more online and things, and that was great. A lot of the trainings online are tremendous, but they do not replicate. They can be supportive or additive to in-person training, but it has some of its shortfalls. MRAA training, dealer week, put a little plug in there for that. has been super great. So both the physical training that our manufacturers offer, both engine and boat manufacturers on site, they've ramped those up. The MRAA and Dealer Week training, both on site, and now we've got a pretty robust online training that we're bringing down into our staff during January, February, and March, or early March, before the season gets fully kicked in gear in the Northeast. Taking advantage of those kinds of trainings, and we like to be analogous to a lot of sports teams. If you're a football team, and even if you had the good fortune of being top tier and have a layoff this past week, you don't give up your training, right? So that is what we've always done, and COVID changed that, because literally people were just in a little bit of survival mode of, we had so much business and blessed with so much business. And we all know of, supplier struggles and parts shortcomings and back orders and all of those. Everybody dealt with that as best as you possibly could, but it was challenging. So those are, I won't say 100% behind us, but the supply chain issues have definitely improved significantly. And I believe will continue to improve significantly over the next several months. So it's kind of more back to business as normalized, I guess you would say. And so normalized is a word that we've been using a lot, and that blocking and tackling, doing that, and every hour of every day is critical to both our understanding and being able to reach the goals that we've set forth.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned Dealer Week. I think a good opportunity here to segue into, for you and I know this, of course, but for our listeners here, our background together stretches way back to probably 15 years or so, when I first kind of got involved in helping MRAA reinvent its conference. And, you've talked about several people, whether it's your folks or Hertha or David Parker and the 20 group as a sounding board, and people that have been guiding you. But you've been a great guide for me. You've provided me with great insights and ideas and thoughts and direction and feedback on things like building out the conference and efforts that we've put into kind of reinventing the MRAA and that sort of thing. So first of all, thank you. Appreciate that very much. You've also now been on the MRAA board for most of my time here at MRAA, which is fantastic. And it's been a formal way for me to continue to gain that feedback above and beyond the friendship we've developed. This year, we're kicking off your first of 2 years as the chairman of the MRAA. So also want to thank you for volunteering and participating with that and giving back to your industry and to the association. Why is that involvement? Why has that playing that role for the organization, for the industry, and becoming a guide like that? Why has that been important to you over your career, and how do you fit that into your busy schedule?
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be able to work together with you for over 15 years. So we're both very, very fortunate that way. Again, going back to my upbringing, we were fortunate to be, church-bound people, and we believe in God, and we're brought up very much in giving back to our local communities. And then I had the good fortune to be exposed to our industry, AMI, and New York Marine Trades on Long Island. And then, I've always had a desire to give back and see if I could do things on a little bit broader scale. And the MRAA, creates that environment. So I'm big believers in both the local, the regional, and the more national, side of things. But in terms of why it's important, the giving back, it's kind of stems from our home of super service, right? How can we be the best that we can possibly be as human beings and challenge ourselves, and hopefully make the world just a little bit better place, both in our home backyards. So, that, of course, is in our own personal friendships of Ree and I's and our boys, Jay and Ryan, and then expand that to whatever level, in my case, with the MRA on a national side, that hopefully we can make just a slight difference of making the world the better place. That's what drives me. And, for people that know me well, I'm an early riser. I always get accused of my 5 o'clock emails and so on and so forth. But that's the time when a lot of times I can do those kinds of thinking and do those kinds of things on a volunteer and give back level that are supportive. And I always find that the relationships and the little bit that we're able to give back and hopefully have some level of positive influence, we gain so much more of building relationships and just, learning from other people is just, a tremendous gift. But, when it comes from the art of giving, I always find that we ultimately wind up receiving more than what we give, although that's not the intention or desire.
Right. Yeah, that's a great perspective. I really like that. One of the things that I think back to when we were first building out Dealer Week and kind of reinventing the conference back in 2019, one of the pieces of advice that you gave me was kind of hey, we should get our partners, our boat builder, manufacturers, suppliers more involved in kind of the direction of the conference, the direction of MRAA and so forth. And so before we get to talking about like kind of a vision of that you might have for as chair of the organization and kind of the strategic plan part of it is, I want to back up a little bit to that because I feel like that was a pivotal moment for MRAA in building in our partners, our boat builders, our manufacturers, suppliers, engine manufacturers, and so forth into the strategic planning element of where MRAA should be going, what MRAA should be doing to support the industry and grow the industry and so forth. So talk a little bit just from that framework. You've mentioned the importance of your manufacturers and your partners and your banks and all of that in your business. Talk a little bit about what kind of sparked that thinking of, hey, let's get these other organizations involved and aligning with the dealer association and helping to set that vision and that trajectory, and why that was important to you and the association.
Yeah, great question. And it's been really terrific. So our thinking has always been that, we don't know, what the best paths are as a dealership. But we've surrounded ourselves with some incredible manufacturers, some incredible vendors. So when we build out our business plans, we're always asking for guidance. What do they see that Strong's Marine is doing well? What do they see or experience that Strong's Marine isn't doing as well as we could or should be from their perspective? And whenever we can have those open, transparent conversations, it becomes much more of a partnership, right? So we're transparent, and it doesn't mean that there's not challenging conversations, because sometimes they have a different point of view than us. Sometimes we may have a different point of view from them. But when it comes from desiring to get to a common goal on a common platform, and if it's not just a one-shot deal, like you commit to it, and it's more a way of life, then you work through those high points and those low points, knowing that there's a common good, a common goal. And so that was the thinking of wanting to bring our strategic partners in with the MRAA. The MRAA, for those who aren't clear, is at its core, represents dealers, boat dealers in the marine industry. But we can't do that without, at least in my belief, we can't do that to our fullest ability, right, without having strategic partners, as you said, boat manufacturers, engine manufacturers, banks, parts and supply, accessories, all the different, 20 groups, every aspect of the business. And so those strategic relationships on the MRA level, as you said, have been extremely pivotal, beneficial. And what I enjoy best about it is when you get people together with differing viewpoints, most people's initial perception is, well, the manufacturer's, way over here to the right, and the dealer's way over here to the left, and there's not a lot of common ground in the middle. And I think what we have learned and what we were hopeful of is that just the opposite is true. Where the common ground is probably 90 or 95% in the center, still, but advantageously from differing viewpoints, right? but the common ground is still 90 or 95%. And, whether it comes to, dealer agreements or some other different things, there may be differing viewpoints that a dealer might have a stronger opinion on one way, the way they think it should be versus a manufacturer. But if you focus on the 90 or 95% of things where there's quick to build consensus and just collaboration, then the other things, kind of because you've developed this transparent relationship, the other things you can work your way through well.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And it has been transformational for us. I mean, just the ability to bring them all together and talk and come up with a plan. And you talk about 95% being on the same page. We came out with a strategic plan. So for our listeners, we held a strategic planning meeting here in Minneapolis back in April of 22. We are just about to roll out the full overview of the plan so the industry can see it and the industry can understand what our mission and vision is here. But that plan was put together by about 50 people, right? And it was our board of directors, who are all dealers. It was our strategic partners, again, those manufacturers, suppliers, service providers, and so forth. Some of our Young Leaders Advisory Council members and our staff. And we got together over a course of 2.5, 3 days, put our heads together on some survey results that we had seen, some background on where we felt like the industry is going. And we came up with a strategic plan that we can be really proud of and that we can be really focused on as we move forward. In your role as chairman of the association now, do you have any specific components of that strategitic plan or any elements that you feel are, hey, these are going to be the priorities for the next couple of years, or anything like that you want to just speak to?
Sure. Again, very fortunate to be coming in from my predecessors, Rob Susi, Joe Lewis, Joe Hoffmaster, yourself, and many others before me that have built an incredible base. So, we're starting at a very high level already. So we're extremely thankful for that. Some of the things that are near and dear to me, working with our board and working with yourself, of course, as president, and your team, the communication side of things, NMMA, I think, has done a really good job on having consistent communication from kind of one voice, pulling together multiple factors, but getting them in one concentrated effort. So that's something that is on our docket that you and I and the board have spoke about. And I think you guys are well on your way to pulling that together on kind of a weekly or something to that format of consolidated communication that makes it a little bit easier for our dealers to be able to we're all bombarded by emails and every other possible form of communication you could think of. So to hopefully simplify that, streamline it, and make it more valuable, more meaningful, and more easily digestible for our dealers, that's definitely a high priority for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that you and your team will get that rolling here quickly, and we'll adjust and adapt as we get dealer feedback. The second one is, again, the MRAA has made great strides on growing our dealer base that is actively involved in MRAA, both as members and participation. Interesting, as whether it be One Water or Marine Max and others, that is a challenge for MRAA as they consolidate as part of their business plans. And thankfully, overall, those consolidations seem to be going well. But it is a challenge / opportunity for both the consolidators and MRAA to brainstorm together to figure out, okay, we need and want their representation as dealers and their individual stores to still remain active and hopefully become even more active in MRAA, because we are the national guiding association and we need their involvement. So as it's easy to lose some dealers that way through consolidation, and we're going to be proactive about listening to their needs and seeing how we can reverse that trend, not of consolidation, but of their involvement with MRAA. That'll ultimately be good for them, be good for our clients, our prospective clients, good for MRAA, and ultimately good for the industry.
Yeah.
And then the third part is an extension of, again, what predecessors before me have already done a great job with, is expanding the education and training that MRAA offers. Like I'm involved in a fair amount of other associations and organizations, and many organizations have the same challenge. You can build these great trainings and educations, but it's how much adoption, how much engagement, how much actual raw involvement do we get from the dealers? Because ultimately we could produce the best training and education in the world, but if the dealers aren't utilizing it, enjoying the experience, benefiting from it, then we've missed the mark.
Right.
And so I don't think that's the case. I think you guys have done a great job, but I do think there's a big opportunity for us to significantly expand the actual engagement. And your team has already made some great strides in simplifying some opportunities there, expanding the online platforms and capabilities, and being there to help walk dealers through how to utilize it and take advantage of it. And now it's up to us to continue to listen, do a good job, hold ourselves accountable, and use those measurables to make sure that we're continuing to benefit the dealers.
Yeah, great. Appreciate that overview. Very, very, very helpful, and in line with where our mission has taken us this year. We're looking for a strong year this year with MRA and all that we deliver. We're gonna kind of wrap up with a question about kind of what's your view for the year ahead for the boat business. But before we do that, dealers always find the value of other dealers saying, "Hey, you should participate in this. You should be involved with this," and that sort of thing. If you had a value proposition that you offered for why you should be involved as a dealer, why you should be involved with MRAA, what would that sound like? What would that message be to other dealers, that why they should be participating and engaged with MRAA and all of these things that you were mentioning?
Sure. So different people come about it from different perspectives. From my perspective, on the association level, on the board and chair, it's about giving back, right? And hopefully helping the industry to become a better industry. When I have my dealership president's hat on and I'm working with my direct reports, and listening to Ryan, my son, vice president, Sarah, our director of operations, Jim, our CFO, and our marketing team led by Bridget, etc., Patty, our business manager, it's okay, how can we advance training and education for their people, their teams? And we believe MRA has got some really great things going on. Let's do a deep dive. Let's make sure we're giving the MRAA the feedback that they need, how to hopefully make it more available to us, easier to access, more valuable for every one of our team members. So if you're a dealer out there that isn't taking advantage of that, I guess I would challenge you as to why, and so things that we hear are, well, I'm too small of a dealer. I just don't have the time for that. I don't have all these multiple different departments, etc. I would push back, frankly, and say, well, that honestly it feels like a real reason to you, and I'm sure it is, but not an acceptable or a good reason. You can watch things at midnight. You can watch things at 5 o'clock in the morning. If you want to truly be a professional and be the best you can be in your industry, it doesn't mean you need to be large, but you can be the best. However many people your dealership is, it could be 5 people, it could be 15 people, it could be 30 people, it could be 500 people. There's education and training that's tremendously available, and it's a lot of it is available online. So it's okay to be selfish about it, and be selfish in the fact that I want to be the best we can be. MRAA and the 20 groups, in my belief, are great organizations to be able to make myself a better person, a better dealership, have my employees be more engaged, and ultimately then happier, more fulfilled, which means they'll hopefully stay with you, for a longer period of time. And then ultimately, with those experience, it'll transcend to making a better experience for our customers. And we all know one of the things that's been talked about a lot by our manufacturers, by MRAA, our banks, et cetera, is the retention and the experience of clients that bought during COVID.
Right.
And so that's been a challenge, but I think our industry overall has done a really good job, and the retention numbers so far seem to be supporting that our industry and our dealers have done a really good job. So I think the training and the education to continue that momentum of retaining that high level of registered boat owners that are out there, that's foundational to our term mutual success.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that a lot on the strategic planning level, again, with our manufacturers and banks and all versions of vendor partners. So I would ultimately say, be selfish about it. Get involved with the 20 group, get involved with the local association, get involved with the MRAA, because you want to become better as a person. You want your dealership to be better. You want to be more profitable. Ultimately, we want to have delighted employees and clients. But of course, at the end of the day, we want to be very profitable so that we can do the kinds of things in our communities and for ourselves personally and our teammates that we want to do. So it's okay to be selfish about it, but reach out.
Yeah. Perfect. That's great. Thank you for that. So let's wrap this up. Let's kind of start to wind down here with that outlook for the year ahead in the boat business. What we know that we've talked a lot about the uncertainty and that type of thing, and that was a big theme at Dealer Week. And we've talked about this kind of shifting from COVID to this post-pandemic environment. What is the outlook that you're working through right now on what you expect from the 2023 calendar year?
Well, I will tell you, from having done budgets pretty diligently and religiously every year for a lot of years, this has been a challenging year to try and land on where our budgets and forecasts should be. So we do have those, but we will be adaptable and we'll be flexible, and we'll be looking at them more frequently than maybe we have over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. That adaptability and flexibility and consistent review, I think, in 2023 is going to be extremely important. In our world, Strong's Marines world, with our team and our vendors, we're looking at it as, again, going back to looking at 2019, 2018, but it's the fundamentals that we need to focus on. And so we're looking at it much more like gold mining than this huge swath of people that are coming into our dealership or have been coming into our dealerships and marinas over the last 2 COVID years. So it's nothing new. It's normalized, again, to use that word, but we're looking at more like gold mining. Every sale happens one at a time. So when we measure email responses or return phone call responses or social media responses from inquiries, through those platforms or website inquiries. When originally, back several years ago, I'd ask our team, well, what's people's clients' expectation of a response? It'd be like, well, maybe it's an hour or 2 hours or sometime within the day. And now that's just totally unrealistic. People's expectations rightfully are 5 minutes or less. In some cases, it's 60 seconds or less. But I think as an industry, we're working really hard with some success, not as much success as we'd like, but I think we're getting better. We're measuring it better. We need to have, in every case, a 5-minute or less response. And that goes into the gold mining, kind of mindset. So I think MRA's got some great training on that from different people. There are other people, again, going back to our strategic partners, that have some great resources. But that timeliness of response, having a high level of executional focus, I think, is what's critical for 2023.
Yeah, great summary. Great way to wrap this up. Jeff, every time we connect, every time we talk, I learn something. So appreciate so much the last hour. This conversation has been great. I've learned a lot again today, so I appreciate that very much. Thank you for joining us here on the Boat Biz Podcast. Any parting comments, thoughts before we end up here?
I would say one thing that I neglected to mention when we were going through, and actually it was coming into dealer week when we weren't sure if it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And we were unsure of, budgets and things like that. And you'll probably remember this once I say it. I was like, okay, we're going to go for this. I was a board member at that time. We're going to put the pedal to the metal, but we're only going to do it under one condition. Is if we can have a kick-ass party.
Right. I do remember
that. So I think it's really important to remember that we're blessed to be in a fun sport, a fun environment. And let's make sure that we do work really hard on our executional priorities and abilities, but let's make sure we equally celebrate our successes, have fun, because we all like to be in a fun environment. Yeah. So I would say that's my parting words.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for the 7th episode of the Boat Biz Podcast. Thank you very much, and we'll see you out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.